everybody, I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and welcome to a special 70th episode of the weekly Ratchet. Folks, I got conned. Hey there, folks, and welcome to this special episode of the Weekly Ratchet. If you're watching this for the first time, well then, welcome. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to board gaming, and the Weekly Ratchet especially is a weekly program dedicated to board gaming, which is, sort of what I call a variety show. I talk about a number of things, like recent games that have come in, recent games that I've played. Of course, this episode will be quite dedicated to the GenCon Festival, which just took place in Indianapolis, Indiana. Just got back from that last night. And I've got a ton to chat about. I've got a table here next to me completely covered in games and swag and merchandise and whatever else that I picked up. I'm going to show all of it to you. I've also got a ton of videos that I'll be sort of jumping to, images that I'll be jumping to. I did quite a lot of filming over the past week there at GenCon. Now I will, let me say this up front. I should have configured my phone a little bit more carefully than I did for some of these videos. I think I shot all this at 30 frames a second. It's a little jumpy. I don't have a current working gimbal. I need to sort that out. I'm going to try and get myself maybe an actually new portable camera. I'll jump to that here in a little bit. Anyways, so there's going to be a lot. I'm going to try and keep this organized. I have some notes off frame here that I'll be referencing throughout the opening of this show. Now, usually at this spot, I talk about, maybe reviews I've got coming out, things that are going on. I'm going to just sort of skip all that and instead show you a quick little montage about GenCon. So yeah, obviously a lot to cover. Now, I drove into Indianapolis on Tuesday last week. Finally got to just kind of enjoy the scenery there coming across the plains of Indiana. Beautiful area. I got there Tuesday evening and was there first thing Wednesday morning to help set up for the Dice Tower group, who I did hang out with throughout the show. They actually got me an exhibitor badge, which was just fantastic because it meant that I could get in there early. I didn't have to run out the door at 6 o'clock when the convention ended every day. I could just kind of hang out, do what I needed to do. Also, being there at the booth, I had a place I could kind of keep some merchandise and such I'd collected throughout the day. Didn't have to keep running back to the car all the time. So that was pretty nice. What is always crazy, and this is the second time that I've been to GenCon, is when you get in there on Wednesday and you see just this, what looks like a warehouse that exploded. There's just stuff all over the place. Most of the walkways are inaccessible. Boxes and pallets, frames, signs laying down, just pieces of stuff all over the place. I mean, it does. It just looks like a tornado blew through some sort of a warehouse. I had a good chuckle at this headless Vault Boy that was on display, and was just kind of walking around, sort of taking everything in. I did run into one unique booth there at GenCon. All right, I'm at this random booth. I don't see anybody here. Well, they got a bunch of games here. I guess they probably don't need these. I can probably just make off with some of these. So yeah, let's do that. I, of course, didn't take any games from The Last Command, and I did eventually get to chat with Ty McDonald and his buddy Sam there, Sam Barmettler, with his Button Kingdoms game and such. So I got to hang out with them just a little bit. They were quite busy that week and weekend because it was just the two of them running their little booth, and so they were quite busy the entire weekend. So the first night that I was there, the first full day and such that I was there, I actually had an event that I got invited to. I do not know exactly how this happened, but I got into a media event with All Play, of course, a massive company that does tables, gaming shelves, and of course a variety of games, mostly on the light to medium scale of things. But I was actually invited out to an event where they were introducing the game Twinkle Twinkle. This is by Ammon Anderson. I kept saying Amon Anderson. I believe it's Ammon Anderson. But I got to hang out there at that event, hung out with a couple friends who I do know from All Play. And of course, it was just teeming with content creators from every corner of the country and probably even some international ones. The highlight of that event, besides getting to hang out with Chris E a little bit, his wife Wendy, and a few other folks there who I knew, was that I finally got to meet Paula Deming. Paula, of course, is with the Watch It Played channel. She also has her own channel. It's called Paula Deming on YouTube, but it's titled Things Get Dicey, where she does like some sketch comedy and such. I finally got to meet her. That's been on a board game bucket list for me for quite some time. I had a real nice quick conversation with her, and hopefully I can cross paths with her again, maybe even collaborate in some way with the Watch It Played group. I would just absolutely love that opportunity. But that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I got a couple photos from that event you've probably seen. Also, I ran into Alex of Board Game Co. And then after that event, I hung out with Tony Lawhorn, friend and follower here of the channel. Of course, Tony's been fairly big in the industry for a long time. He's got a game that was introduced there at GenCon. I actually did not get to check it out. For as much as I hung out with Tony, I never actually got to go and check out his new game, but I did see some pictures of it. It's a party game where players are getting a clue and they have to sort of work independently to draw their half of a photo, and then those photos get matched up at the end and hopefully make a cohesive image. And it sounds like a neat party idea. I don't know how well that would work with my immediate group of players, but I could certainly see that being a lot of fun for the right folks. So that was a lot of fun. The next day, Thursday, first day of Gen Con, walked into the doors and just could not believe how this place looked.
It's not even the same place. Some people put in some long hours yesterday getting this done.
It's crazy how they get in there, overnight, and they get all the carpets down. I mean, almost the entire convention hall is wall-to-wall carpeting. I can't imagine where they even store those things. It is unbelievable how that place looks after less than 24 hours of, people just getting things together. Obviously, their teams show up, and they just make it happen. A few things I was relieved to see.
Well, that is a relief.
And so anyways, like I said, that was Thursday morning. It was day one. I kind of got to walk around. People were still, finishing setup. People were still trying to make sure the cash machine or the registers were working, that the credit card machines were working. Lots of Square, tablets and such set up. And so there's still a lot of frantic activity. But then the doors opened.
Here they come.
I've got a ton of pictures, a ton of videos. I'm going to just kind of run through some of these, and I'll be showing these images on the screen. I did see a curling dice game, which would look pretty interesting. Got a couple pictures of that. I went in to get one game, one of the first things I wanted to try and pick up over the weekend. And while I was there, they had a huge oversized version of this game, Tower Up. You see a lot of this at Gen Con. These very large kind of oversized, presentations of games. Another one that I saw, an oversized version of Spirits of the Wild. It's crazy. You sit there and you see this massive thing, and part of you is like, yeah, I want that. I would totally have this, and I would probably play it once or twice ever, but it'd be so cool to have that. Where the heck would I keep it? Who knows? I did get to run into the designers of Everdell and got their autograph on a new game. I also got to see a table of Beasts and Diplomacy being played. While I was walking around during the week, I ran into the content creator. The channel is called I Teach Her, She Wins, and he's based out of Italy. I've always loved this picture of this inflatable mech that sits outside the convention center. It was been there in the past. I think I've even seen it at some other conventions. Just a really, really cool thing. Managed to run into the Bombusters booth. and got a quick picture with that for my family. So one of the things I've gotten to do there a bunch, and not even just at GenCon, but I know Stephen Bonacore. Stephen Bonacore's previous CEO of Stronghold Games. He was a driving force behind the game Terraforming Mars. He signed it to the publisher, and obviously that did very well for them. He sold the company a couple years ago, and he essentially retired, but is still just a huge force in the industry. And because I know him, I get invited to a lot of his kind of evening events. I've gotten to meet quite a number of people in the industry, and I went down to a bar there. The convention center connects to a number of different hotels, parking garages, even a local mall. And so he was at a hotel right across the street, walked over on the Sky Bridge, and was hanging out here at this bar called Connor's. There were a couple folks there. I didn't know them. Steven and his girlfriend Paula were there. My friend Tony Lawhorn showed up there a little while later, and there was a guy on the phone. He was kind of tied up on the phone, and he finally was like, well, hey guys, I actually got to leave, but hey, real quick before I go, I'm going to do some magic. Now, I came to learn his name was Caleb Wiles. He's a professional magician. He actually did a show at GenCon Saturday that I did get to go and check out. That was just really, really cool. But he ends up standing there and doing some close-up magic, literally making cards appear under an empty deck box 16 inches from my face. And I mean, obviously I don't know how he did it, but it was incredible to watch. And a little while after he left, two other guys on the table, hey, we got to go. They got up and they left. And I'm chatting with Tony, and he says something about Martin. And I was like, what? And he goes, well, yeah, that was Martin Wallace. Shit, now you tell me this? Well, I was getting ready to leave myself, so I stand outside. Well, Martin Wallace is still standing out there. And so I got to meet Martin Wallace, chatted with him a little bit about some games, just kind of casual, tried to make sure I didn't intrude too much or get in their way. But that was really, really fun. One day there also, I think this was Friday, one of my local friends who is really big in the disc golf community, he goes to Gen Con every year, meets up with some friends from Northern Virginia, so I ran into them again. I've only gotten to see his friends at Gen Con. And so we went to the BGG Hot Games room, which I did not get any pictures or film of, except for one. We sat down to play Galileo Galilei. This is the only photo that I took from that room and from that quick event. We were there for like 2 hours. And didn't even get to finish this game, although that's not the game's fault. I'll come back to that. But anyway, so that was kind of neat. I just never gotten to check out the Hot Games room. One thing that was kind of interesting, and I've talked to a couple people about this, and I'm even seeing some comments online, is that I was asked, well, what's the hot game of Gen Con? Like, what's the game? And there really wasn't one. There wasn't this huge surplus of new games like I felt there was 2 years ago, and I'm sure there was last year. I wasn't at Gen Con last year, but I don't know if it's because of the tariffs. I don't know if it's because of some market uncertainty. I don't know if it's just because of timing, but a lot of the games that were hot games, even in that hot games room, were games that have all come out in the past 8, 9, 10 months. So SETI was there, Galileo Galilei, which came out I think at Essen last year, if I recall. The Cretaceous Rails game was there, which is relatively new. I think I said SETI already. Shackleton Base was there, which came out a while ago. And I didn't get a look at all the other games that were there. But there was not a lot of stuff there that was necessarily came out in just the past month or two. And there was nothing except for maybe Vantage, a new game by Stonemaier, which was popular, but even then, it was not sold out as of even like Sunday morning. I don't know if it sold out later on Sunday, which is the final day of the con. So it was kind of interesting. I mean, it was good to get to go and check out some of those games, but it was interesting that there wasn't a lot of stuff that really felt new. Anyways, Gen Con has an absolutely huge artist area. This was not far from the Dice Tower booth, where a number of artists are out there with either books that they've written, a lot of paintings and artwork, all sort of custom made, handmade. And so that was really kind of neat to see. I didn't buy anything there because I know the prices were pretty high. There's also this really neat balloon display that's just outside of the vendor hall 2 years ago. Gosh, what was it 2 years ago? Oh, it was a space setup setup. It was kind of like a moon lander of some kinds that they had all done up in balloons. And this was obviously a ship scene, sort of inspired by Leader games, which was just really neat to see. I think on Sunday they actually like sell a raffle ticket or something that lets people go and start popping the balloons for fun. Hopefully those get disposed of properly, but it's still just a really neat thing. And then, of course, as I was saying, I hung out a lot at the Dice Tower booth, which was a really nice booth that they had this year. I think last year they had a similar setup, but it was a good bit bigger than the booth that they had 2 years ago when I was there. And so it was just it was a nice space. It was a good space to kind of get to go. A couple areas I kind of stand back and stretch my legs, maybe even grab a seat, just kind of rest for a moment. They even had I kept calling it the teacher's lounge, a little back area with a curtain that the folks could kind of go and just sit and relax and sort of get away from the noise and the commotion and the attention for a little bit. Not that anyone was knocking my doors down to hang out with me, but still it was nice to kind of get like I said, go and sort of stretch your legs. I did see one fan of the Dice Tower, Rebecca Batzel, ran into me. I was actually sitting there. I said Dice Tower, fan of Tabletop Toolbox, sorry. But I was hanging out at the Dice Tower booth. She came up to say hey, got a quick picture with Rebecca. It was really, really nice to get to see her. And I did have one other person stop by and said they appreciated my Last Command review and had just gone and gotten a copy of that game. So that was pretty cool as well. There are, of course, thousands of games on display at GenCon. Just a few that I know I got some pictures of or quick videos of. Catan had a huge display there. The Spirits of the Wild game was released by Mattel just recently, and so they had a really big setup there, as I was mentioning. Battle of Hoth was definitely a very big game this year, and they also had a big jumbo sort of oversized copy of the game sitting on one of the tables. I found a booth for Rebellion Unplugged, I think is the name of the company, and they had a new Joyride expansion that was announced. That's the, of course, Destruction Derby-esque racing game that I've done a review and an unboxing of here on the channel, which actually got quite a lot of attention. And so I did talk to them. I'll be reaching out to them about trying to take a preview look at that expansion, which I am quite excited for. Doomlings. Doomlings. For those who don't know, Doomlings is like kind of a little party game. I have never played it. I actually have some local friends who want me to teach it to them. They have the game, and we're just never able to figure out the rule book. But they had a Doomlings booth, and they had this massive wheel that you could spin. And the line for this wheel was often out the door of the vendor hall. It was unbelievable how big this thing was, just to go and spin a wheel and hopefully win something for Doomlings. It was just crazy how big that was. One of the last demos that I got to witness was for a game called Dicey Devices.
So in this game, everyone's a mad scientist, but there can only be one in this town. So it's up to you to use your laboratory, your robots, and your trusty assistant Igor to build and upgrade your doomsday weapon to incapacitate others before they incapacitate you. Don't worry, there's no player elimination in this game. If you do get hit, your character card's going to flip over and Igor's going to come help revive you, losing Igor's ability and the ability to shoot at other players. Otherwise, you can do all your normal turn, where you're rolling dice and activating sectors in your lab, gaining resources and activating devices to do area control out in the scrapyard. After your lab, you're going to send the dice that you rolled to the scrapyard. Whoever is dominant can choose to buy that device and bring it back to the lab for further tableau building. After you've collected, now you can send your robots out to that scrapyard, with your goal being set collecting colors. Once you get your first set, you can start shooting at other players. The more sets you have, the more powerful your shots are, and the more times you're shooting. Your goal is to keep everyone down while you're up and running. There's a whole lot more to the game, like blueprints, banking, augments, modifiers. I really could go on all day. You want to know more?
So that was GenCon, and of course, like I said, I got a lot here to talk about, lots of other things to get into from this event. If you've never been able to go to GenCon, let me just say this real quick. If you've never been to GenCon, it's certainly a unique experience, and I had a good time there. I saw a bumper sticker. It was actually a license plate frame as I was driving, and I didn't realize the car in front of me was heading to GenCon, and it was actually a license plate frame that said GenCon, the best 4 days of gaming. And that's probably true. I mean, the just the amount of space that this convention takes up. Like I said, they have the stadium, they have this massive convention center with this huge vendor hall. It's impossible to even film this thing from one end to the other. It is so big. And that's just the vendor hall. Outside, there's all these individual hallways. There's a ballroom where the Dice Tower Awards took place. There was a number of like conference rooms that were being used for demo spaces, meetings, press, like you just name it. Like there was so much there. And that's something that, you can't really replicate anywhere else. Like you got to go to GenCon to see that stuff. But if you feel like you need to go to GenCon to be able to get things that you've never gotten before, or, buy things you can't buy anywhere else, it's really just not the case. Everything that was there, like I said, a lot of these games came out in the past year. There's obviously some stuff being teased that's coming up, but you'll be able to get those things. You can track that stuff in other sources like Board Game Geek. So, I know a lot of people say, I hate missing out on GenCon. And yeah, like I said, it's an experience that's just unrivaled. But it's not, like, don't feel like, I'm never going to have another chance to get this stuff, or I'm never going to be able to play these games. Yeah, you probably can. So I'm glad I got to go. It was, that's what I was going to say. The idea that it's the best 4 days of gaming is probably very true. It is also, without a doubt, the most expensive 4 days of gaming. I was paying $40, $50, $60 a day to park. The food trucks, I went and got a lobster roll from a truck because I had to try a lobster roll, $30-something, and it was terrible. I was like, this is, I've eaten locally out of a food truck better than I've had at GenCon. And so it's like the whole city is just like, how can we get money out of these people? And it was so clearly evident that everything is just geared up to make money off of this idea of GenCon. And I have to wonder how many people really put themselves in financial harm's way, for this once a year event. Like I said, glad I went to go. Also, and I'll probably say this again before this video is over, a huge shout out to my friends Katie and Greg, the Meeple Society, for putting me up for the week. Without them, there's no way I would have been there. Not even debatable. Dice Tower got me in the door. I could probably have afforded my tickets, but I wouldn't be able to get exhibitor badges. So that was certainly awesome. So a huge thanks to Tom Vassell, who I know will never see this. And of course, especially to Katie and Greg for just making this week happen. Anyways, that's enough rambling about GenCon as an event specifically. Let me show you some of this stuff. GenCon is a little bit like Christmas in August. Lots to show you here. And like I said, I kind of brought everything in. So some of the fun stuff, some of the games. We're going to have a good time with this. Last thing I bought the whole week is I had to get me a red and gold fuzzy die. So that's fun. You'll probably see that in the backdrop here at some point. That was the last thing I bought. And the first thing I bought all weekend was this deluxe mat to Galactic Cruise. This thing actually has cutouts for some of the tokens and action spots and whatever, so as you kind of fill it all in, it becomes a relatively smooth playing surface. You don't have to worry about knocking things off as much. So there's that. The first game that I came across, and these aren't all going to be in any particular order, was the game of Twinkle Twinkle. This is, as I mentioned, the game from Ammon Anderson, who I got to sign, and the How I Wonder expansion, a Extraterrestrials expansion, and then some little upgraded standees. And I mentioned I got him to sign it. It was kind of funny, this event. They gave us a bingo card of things to do while we were there, all of us content creators. And it was, get your picture with a bunch of other people, or get in a video of the, designer signing whichever game you get, just all this kind of stuff. And I was like, listen, you're forcing at least this introvert to become quite extroverted, and I'm just not here for it. So I did a couple of the things, but I never finished it, but I did get him to sign the copy, which was nice. So it was still a fun event, and I am looking forward to this game. It's kind of a pattern building game. It reminds me conceptually of the game of Outer Space, which is a little card game I've talked about here on the channel. But this one uses clear acrylic tiles. And it looks like it has a bit more going on with it. So I am excited to check that out. All right. Again, in no particular order, this is Spirits of the Wild Awakening. This is the new version of Spirits of the Wild, this one by Mattel Games. My friend Katie, the Meeple Society, spoke very highly of this game. Yes, I have the overhead going for this. This from Nick Hayes. This is, like I said, it's kind of an updated version. Looks very nice. And like I said, Katie spoke very well of this. And it also came with what I have buried here somewhere is a little, sort of like an expansion. Here it is. A little like a promo expansion. Jeez. Tile of some boards that just kind of add to the content of this game. It says, be careful. I just noticed that. All right, Spirits of the Wild. I also got a couple other games from the All Play event. They did a thing where they said, well, the main invitee gets Twinkle Twinkle, and any of your guests get some little games. I didn't have any guests. So I got Slambo, a 2 to 4 player little card game. Emperor, which is another 2-player little card game. I really don't know much about these, but I heard that even Slambo was pretty good at 2. Vivo is also a little card game with kind of a musical theme, but it's a trick taker for 3 to 4 players. I don't really play trick takers, and I rarely get 3 players together for a little card game like this. So I don't know that we're going to ever get to check out Vivo, but whatever, I have it. Let's see. Let's go ahead and let's do this one first. So I talked about Tacta here on the channel before, and we're going to talk about it again in a little bit. But this is a promotional version of Tacta. So this is a card playing game trying to sort of cover up symbols and expand cards and get points. But this is a free version of the game that they were handing out for the miniature market, but it only plays to 2-player. However, if you buy the game, which plays up to 6 players, the colors are unique in here, which then means you can play up to 8 players, although you might need your driveway to play it on because it actually takes up quite a lot of space despite being a little card game. We'll chat more about it in a little bit. It's a good game. I like it. But it has a couple little things that are going to kind of hold it back, I think, for some players. All right, now we'll chat about promos. And Galileo Galilei. This is from Capstone Games. Designer is Tomasz Olek and Michael Pickel, perchance is how you pronounce that other name. This is a game about Galileo the astronomer trying to sort of discover the galaxy and understand our solar system, but trying to do so under the careful scrutiny and dissatisfaction of the church. I got to play a quick demo of this. I had already bought it. The demo went well, although we didn't get to finish. I'll chat about that here in a little bit. It's a neat game. I had passed on it at Origins because I thought it was dice placement. It does have dice. You never roll them. They are just little counters. I don't know why they quite did it like that, but it's fine. And once I kind of understood even what the dice kind of represent, I actually kind of came to appreciate it as its immersion into the theme. A neat game, and I'll chat about this more here in a little bit. Galileo Galilei. Now, in addition to getting Galileo Galilei from Capstone, I got Juicy Fruits. I don't know anything about Juicy Fruits. Don't know anything about it. I never played it. It's got a whole bunch of little wooden fruit pieces, a little board, player boards, looks like some tile, drafting, placement, whatever. Here's what I will tell you. They gave me this for free for buying Galileo. So I'll let you infer how good this game might be if they're giving it away for free. It looks like something my daughter might like, so my guess is we'll get to play it at some point, and I'll let you know what I think about it then. Now, while I sat there at the Dice Tower booth all weekend, we sat across from Brotherwise Games. I never heard of them, but their banner that was facing me the entire time, and I know this is a very, very white cover in front of a lot of lighting, so I apologize, but this is called Adulthood, and it's a game about being an adult. Sort of experiencing adult. I mean, it almost looks to me, and as it was described to me, it just gave me the feeling of Sims the board game, which is kind of funny because they've actually been announcing a Sims the board game coming out. But this is sort of a tableau builder. You're going to have a job. You may have a companion. You may, have certain traits or things that you're kind of working with, and you've got to sort of build you got to grow your impact, and you have to find happiness, and it kind of uses an Arc Nova set of score charts, and when they cross, that's when you sort of trigger the end game. And it looks very cute. It has this very delightful art style to it. And a couple times I walked over to sort of ask some questions about it and see a little bit more of it. And man, it's I don't know that it's my kind of game, although actually I think it is, because there's like engine building, and there's some ways that you're kind of triggering things across these cards, trying to build synergy between the different cards, which really sounds interesting to me. I read online that it can be a little flat, kind of a little one-dimensional, but it just looks really delightful. And then actually later on, my friends Katie and Greg and their son Justin was speaking very highly of it. It was $40 though, and I was like, God, am I really going to play this enough to justify that price tag? And then I went to the consignment room there at GenCon and found this copy very gently used for $25. So I grabbed it, and then I went back to the booth and I bought the Pet Projects expansion, which of course adds pets, because I am not going to play a game about life without pets. So I am quite looking forward actually to checking out that game. Now, I think I mentioned that the designers of Everdell were there, and I bought Everdell Silverfrost and got it signed by the designers. I had no intention of buying this. You probably can't really see that. I might be able to catch the signatures and the reflection a little bit because I used a silver paint pen, which is nice. But I had a nice conversation with him. I had no intention of buying this game because there's already too much Everdell, I think. But it does look delightful, and I do like the game. This one is kind of set in this perma winter, although you do still have the seasons that you're moving through, I believe. You're still building a tableau of cards. There's still worker placement to get resources. It's all different resources. I, of course, had to get the deluxe edition. The events that you're kind of triggering have been replaced with more of a quest kind of thing, almost like the Spire Crest game. And it just sounds really neat. There's this idea that some of the action spaces or even cards can get covered with snow, and you'll have to melt it with fire to be able to, do those actions or get those cards. It just looks nice, and I like Everdell, and I really wanted a signed copy, so I bought it. Oh, what are you gonna do? Okay. This is the newest version of Compile. It's called Compile Main 2. I've talked about the original version in the past. It's been a good couple of months now. But this is a game where you're competing. It's a two-player game only. You're competing as kind of a rogue AI. You have 3 algorithms or projects that you're trying to finish, and they are titled things like Chaos, Clarity, Corruption, Fear, Luck, Ice, Mirror, Smoke, Time, and War. You're playing cards down either face up or face down. Face up triggers a whole bunch of abilities, but face down will give you some pretty consistent scoring. And you're trying to get to a value of, I believe, 10 or maybe it's 15, I can't quite recall, to be able to compile one of your 3 programs. I enjoyed this. It's very, very heavily based on Air, Land, and Sea, to the point that I'm surprised they haven't gotten sued, if I'm entirely honest with you, because they are very, very similar games from not the same designer. But I liked it, and I wanted to go ahead and get the new version. It sold out immediately on the first day, so I was able to be front in line actually to grab that one. Let's see, a couple other little things. Let me go ahead and cover some small things here on the overhead camera. Here's a flyer for the new Joyride expansion. This one kind of bummed me out. This was a promo pack from the Dice Tower booth for Legacy of You. However, that is the actual only card of this pack that is from Legacy of You. The rest of this is from that roll and write or flip and write game of his. I still cannot remember what the heck that game is called. I did not really care too much for that game, so I'm only going to get to use that one card out of it. I got a GenCon pin, because why not? And then, let's see, what else do I have here? I don't want to get to that one yet. I actually want to get to these. I picked up the newest expansion to Sea Salt and Paper. The first expansion was called Extra Salt. This one's called Extra Pepper. I don't know why it wasn't called Extra Paper. I don't know anything about this, though, but I like that game. We haven't played it in quite a while, but I did enjoy it, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. I stopped by the Ravensburger booth, picked up just a couple of Lorcana cards so that I could get the Gen Con exclusive convention card. These things tend to go for a lot of money, although I haven't sold any. But I just had to have that. So a while back, let me see, am I ready to get to that? No, not yet. One more thing. Hang on one second. Oh, here's some Dice Tower component trays. I always do like these things. And then I picked up Nature. Let me get this stuff out of the way. Okay, I picked up Nature and a couple of its modules. Now, I didn't know this right away. I actually, when I first saw this game, just in the art style, I think you can agree with me, it just looked like the game of Earth, and I thought it was going to be sort of another Earth game. But it's not. These are actually based on the Evolution games. So Evolution was a series of games. There's a couple of them out now where you're kind of creating creatures and trying to adapt them to be able to live and thrive. You can adapt them into, predators, which will potentially eat other players' creatures. You can evolve them, of course, to resist those predators. You can evolve them to live in environments that predators maybe can't, etc. And so this kind of creates a new system for that game in that you have a base game, you're doing almost essentially that. But then you've got these other modules you can add. So here you can build dinosaurs, which may give you new things that your animals can do. And then some of these other systems may give you new ways to avoid these other modules. So here is Arctic Tundra. There was a Rainforest one, which actually doesn't come out until next year. There was a Flight one, which I didn't get. Maybe I should have. I'm slightly concerned that these may become, just a beast that you won't be able to keep up with. I mean, even this Jurassic, very, very lightweight for like $20 or whatever it was. I liked Evolution. It could be a little aggressive, a little take that easy. You're sort of, potentially killing off your opponent's animals. But I did like the system, and this one just sounds kind of neat. And so I decided to go ahead and just grab a little bit of it so I can kind of get a taste of the system and see if it's something that I want to keep collecting. I also did like that these are sustainably packaged. And so they weren't even shrink wrapped. They just had bands around them, and I appreciate that. All right, so a while back, and I don't know when this happened, but Stonemaier and Meeple Source kind of teamed up. And so now when you go to these cons, you'll often find Meeple Source and Stonemaier being sold in the same booth. And that's not a bad thing. Stonemaier, of course, is Stonemaier, Wingspan, Finspan, Wormspan, a lot of other, good games. And Meeple Source does upgrades for games. A lot of screen printed meeples, a lot of like coins and metal pieces, components and such. They've gotten really big into 3D printing stuff, which I'm kind of hit or miss on in some cases. But I did pick up just 2 mats to the game of Wormspan. These things they're like $12 a piece. So I don't want to buy the whole suite of, I think, 5 that game can go up to. But I figured with 2, like my wife and I could play, or I could do it solo, because I really do like that game. I was going to buy some other Wormspan upgrades, but I talked myself out of it. I did pick up some plastic scoring pieces to the Race for the Galaxy, Roll for the Galaxy, and the New Frontiers games. Just the score tokens, but with nice plastic pieces instead of cardboard. Usually I think the Meeple stuff is too expensive. Meeple Source stuff is too expensive. But I don't know if they had lower prices at this show or what, but it just felt a little bit more reasonable. So I went ahead and picked up those as well as this. This is a 3D printed upgrade for Windmill Valley. So Windmill Valley, I've talked about before. You're planting these little tulip gardens on your player board, and you just have little cardboard. They're kind of finicky, little cardboard tulip tokens. And these instead use that same shape. You probably won't be able to see this on the camera. The same shape, but then has the actual 3D tulip sticking off of that base. And so you get all the different colors. I can imagine this is going to make your player board just absolutely explode with color. And while these are 3D printed, and of course I like 3D printed stuff, I have a lot of 3D printed stuff, I don't really like game components with the layer lines and all that kind of stuff. But these were just too nice to pass up. I think they're going to make the game even prettier than it already is. I also picked up some scoring tokens that are metal for the Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy. Just give the different points that you're drawing out of the bag as a result of conflict. I picked up a couple other little things. This is expansion for solo or co-op play for Mistborn. It's not really an expansion, actually. It's just another way of playing, another level of a boss to play against, which makes him more difficult. That was also actually being sold at the Brotherwise booth with the Adulthood game. And I bought it, and I came back. I was chatting with one of the demo guys working the booth, and he goes, "Oh, do you know Mistborn?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I love Mistborn." He goes, "Oh, we have an upgrade for the solos." Yeah, I already bought it. I said, "What I really would love to see is a metal tokens upgrade for the metals that you're burning in the game." And he just kind of grinned and just kind of nodded, and he kind of like, yeah. I was like, "Oh, you're going to do it, aren't you?" So that'll probably cost me a lot of money at some point, getting upgraded metal coins for that game, but that's going to look so cool. I bought some The Last Command. This is the Scrappers expansion for The Last Command game. As I mentioned, my good buddy Ty was there, and I stopped by and bought that from him. It just adds a couple cards that start the game in the scrap pile, and it adds abilities for the players to get cards from the scrap. So things that get scrapped as a consequence of certain actions, you may have a chance to get back and potentially reuse, which could be quite powerful. What is this? This is the Jackie Fox promo to Rock Hard 1977. Now, I didn't get this as a result of GenCon. This was actually a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend who had a connection and was able to get me one of these. So it was given to me at GenCon, and I immediately hit it. So this is, of course, Jackie Fox, the designer of not Rock Hard 1977. This is her character in the game. This was being sold at GenCon last year. Of course, it sold out very quickly, as did the game. But I didn't know that you could buy it online. I didn't buy the game until sometime later, and I even think that possibly by then, the promo may not have been available anymore online. But I managed to get one, and I am ecstatic. I also picked up a possibly the best $1.88 upgrade I've ever purchased. These are 5 dice. Chessex had a couple of booths there at the con. These are just plain old generic dice in the player colors of Rock Hard 77. The game has a single die that players pass around. They're rolling it to see if they, sugar crash from taking too much sugar in the game, taking too much candy in the game. You may have to roll the die if your job has variable times of day that you may have to work, or if the job gives you varying amounts of pay. So when you work the job, you may have to roll a die to see how much money you get. And there's just one die, so you're always passing it around like candy, and it gets a little annoying. So I finally got a die in each player color. I'm just going to keep it in with each player's player colors, and that's going to just make the game so much easier to work with. So between that and the Jackie Fox promo, I am already very excited to play Rock Hard 77 again. Okay. Oh, I forgot about this. First of all, I've talked about Bombusters a ton here on the channel, and I stopped by their booth, and I said, every time I type in the game in Board Game Geek so I can log my plays, there's always another item listed, and it's this Bombusters 3 New Missions booklet, which I didn't know was a booklet. I didn't know what it was. And the lady said, yeah, we have it, but we're only supposed to give it out if you buy the game. And I was like, listen, I've played the game dozens of times. I've introduced it to tons of new people. I've talked about it on my YouTube channel. And she goes, here you go. So this is the 3 New Missions little promo sort of expansion. What I quickly realized is that this is for after you have finished the 66 missions of the core game. These things look hard. They look complicated. It looks like you're actually supposed to kind of write on this sheet, so I'm probably going to have to scan it. My guess is you can probably just find this thing online and print it off. I'm half tempted to put it out online. But anyways, this is just another little upgrade, which I will stuff in the bottom of the box because I doubt we will ever get to it, at least anytime soon, the Bombusters. Okay. Time for that confession. I went to the Meeple Source booth in Stonemaier. I bought all those upgrades you saw already, and then I sat through a demo. This is like, seriously, it's got to be 10 to 12 pounds. This is Vantage. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. God, look at the back of this box. Is this not the most plain, simple looking thing that you've ever seen? Very, very little to this. You got a central board, a player board, which only holds like 9 cards, and you just got this massive box of cards, couple of tokens, couple of dice, and that's basically it. But I sat through a demo. And I was actually I was the first person at the table, waited for some other folks to show up and sat through this demo. And I recorded it. The guy said, yeah, sure, absolutely, go ahead and record it. And for the first time, I'm going to actually play it. I'm going to just play what he said so I don't have to. Now, if you're not interested in watching this, you can skip to this timestamp to the end of that short clip. And if you don't care at all about this game, well, you can cut to this timestamp and to where I talk about the next game. But let me go ahead and play this for you.
Called to this foreign planet by the traveler. This dude in a red robe is not a big white orb in the sky, but he has given you a mission. You have a reason you are here. Then everything goes wrong, and like any good sci-fi, you're going to crash on the planet. So while you have your initial mission, it doesn't inherently mean that that is going to be what you do, because when you play Skyrim, you don't chase down Alduin right away, you go do all the side quests. So when you are playing this game, you are going to have a couple of different things in front of you. The first being your location card. In Vantage, you are tied to your teammates, thank you very much, via radio communication. Not video though, so they are never allowed to look at your location card. That means that I get to sit here and describe this. Maybe I crash and I'm in this underground temple that has some kind of light coming off of it, maybe some vegetation. I'm not entirely sure.
I see it.
What that means to you, I don't know, but that's the way I see it. Now, when you're looking at your location, you're going to have its number, something about what's going on there to kind of give you the flavor of what you can do, how you're going to move away from it, but most importantly, these actions down here. These actions are replicated on cards as well. So when you take your turn, you can do something here, or you can do something on your player grid. But each of the actions is tied to one of these storybooks. These storybooks, there are 6 of them, well, technically 7 of them, and this is going to be how you interact with the game primarily. Because if I say I'm going to go ahead and inspect at location 83, I'm going to flip this thing open, and at 83, it's going to tell me, inspect a gateway for 3 dice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and generate a dice pool of 3 dice. All right, that's a decent roll. So, because I took a purple action, I'm going to be able to use any of my challenge slots that have the purple action, or something that is just usable whenever. In this case, I had a blank die come up. That's great. Goes out of the pool. These 2, though, I have to handle, because in Vantage, too many tokens on the board. In Vantage, you're going to have time, morale, and health that you're tracking. If I do not place these dice, I'm going to lose those resources. And there is a strict way to die in the game if anything hits 0. So, because I've rolled these dice, and thankfully I'm taking a purple action, I'm going to say I can put that there, and I'm going to put this guy right here. Now, in certain situations, say maybe my dice slots are full, if my buddy Jason here is also with me, he has these lightning bolt slots called impact slots. And he says, you know what, Mark, don't worry about it. I've got you covered.
Yeah.
So you're able to split your dice pool around.
Interesting.
And in addition, there are these skill tokens that you might find. And if I were taking the appropriate action for this, either Jason or myself can say, you know what, I want to make my dice rolls easier. I'm going to throw these in instead of rolling 3 dice. I know they're the wrong token, but if instead of rolling 3, I'd only roll 1. Now, once you have assigned all the dice, we would go back into here, and I will find entry 83 again. And it will tell me what happens. So in 83, when I inspected the gateway, it says you should pick up Vantage at a manufacturer price of 90, suggested, because I'm not going to spoil the game for you. And you are going to go through and essentially interact with the game that way. You're going to pick something to do on your location, get some flavor text, find out what you need to roll, mitigate it, find out your consequences, and move on. Now, like I said to start, there is absolutely a strict win-loss condition. I have a mission that brought me here, and I may have unlocked some destinies along the way. If you know Fire games, Jamie's cats are always in the game. Here, Walter, and Biddy. They also climbed into an escape pod. So one of the destinies in the game is save the cats. But the joy of the game is I am able to get to this win condition normally around 90 minutes to 2 hours. But then I learned that over the hill, there's an armory full of mech suits. I want a mech suit, man. Those are cool. So, yeah, we can win now, but I'm going to play for another hour or so because not only do I want a mech suit, I want to use it, right?
12.
Right, well, yeah, I did play for 14 hours once. I don't recommend doing that. But the game is engaging enough that it had me do that. So
Now, after listening to that guy's pitch, I realized two things as I was listening to him. A, he had obviously played the game a good bit. He knew the game very, very well. He was able to cite, oh, here's things I've discovered while playing this. And he also really liked it. He spoke very highly of it. And he said, listen, I know, I'm working the booth. I've got a little financial incentive here. But I played this game a lot. One single session, I played it for 14 hours. And I love it. He said it does things I've never seen a game do. And I just really, really enjoy it. And so I was asking him a couple of questions. I was asking about, how much space does it take, how long does it take to set up, all that kind of stuff. It's very, very quick to set up. You set up those two boards, a couple of components. You can 3D print some trays, make it a little easier to set up, slap a card down, and you're basically ready to go. He said that he actually showed a picture of his solo play. He had a bunch of cards out, but it still wasn't really a huge footprint. There is a lot of reading, but not as much as some of the feedback I had seen online. I had read some opinions of the game already as people have received their orders, and they're like, yeah, it's just a lot of reading. It's, okay, dice check and read, and dice check and read. And he said, yeah, that's there. He said, but you're just always compelled to get to that next sort of chapter. He said the solo game was great. He said that was actually the 14-hour experience that he had. And he was telling me, he's like, we found this underwater fish-driven taxi service. I found some sort of like a weird creature he could ride around in the space. And he found this giant mech factory where he could, pilot a mech and zip around the place. He was like, it's just awesome. And as he was explaining it, I said, this literally sounds like No Man's Sky, the board game. And he goes, actually, yeah, that's pretty accurate. I thought, I can't pass up this opportunity to check out what might just be an absolutely incredible board game. So I went ahead and I got it. And of course, not just that, but I had to go and get the upgraded components and the metal coins. And I had to get the dual layered player boards. But I see myself being able to play this, get to know it, let my wife just kind of watch me play a little bit. If she decides it's something that she's interested in, she can basically learn from watching me play. And then we just plop down an extra player board and drop out her starting card, and away we go. It's not a legacy. It's not a campaign game. There's no saving from play to play. You can zip through the storyline real quick and just finish your mission, or you can just run around and do side quests and kind of do whatever you want to do. It sounds neat, and I'm looking forward to checking this one out and seeing how it goes. Okay, there is one last game to chat about. These are expansions. These are our expansions to a game. The Thunderworks game, or Thunderworks publisher, made the game Tenpenny Parks, which I've chatted about here on the channel. It's one of my top 100 games, I think well into the top 20 or so, if I recall. Really, really love Tenpenny Parks. And these are new expansions that are not out yet. These are prototype copies. I've been chatting with Thunderworks. I met with them at Origins. I got in touch with their marketing manager. They had one copy of these at GenCon to be able to show to people. And she said, hey, if you swing by afternoon on Sunday, you can just go ahead and have these, and we don't have to ship them to you. We've got more at home that we can hand out to other folks. So, I got my hand on these. I'm really, really excited about these. I love this game. This one looks like it adds a bunch of new ideas, content, landmarks, specialists, new player boards, custom improvements, all kinds of stuff. This looks like just some additional themes. So the original game had, Western and space and underwater and Aztec or whatever. And this one looks like a couple of new themes. I don't know if you're replacing existing themes in the game or what, but this adds winter lights, and spooky nights as new themes to play with. Doesn't really seem to add any new content necessarily, but I don't know if you'll be adding these themes in your game or, like I said, replacing existing themes. I'll be checking these out quite soon because I am very, very excited for Tenpenny Parks. That's it. Got through the list. Now, usually here at this point in the show is when I would jump to question of the week. I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. I did ask a question in episode number 69, and I will recap that here at the end of the show. We will do question of the week. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week. But for now, let me go ahead and tell you about some recently played games. All right, into some recently played games. Now, I do have to cover a couple things from last week before I went to GenCon. I'll get through these fairly quick. I'll try to at least. My daughter had a friend come over for a sleepover. Her name was Emma. I won't be putting any pictures of Emma up here on the screen, but Emma plays a lot of chess. In fact, a lot of my daughter and her friends, they play chess together, which is an interesting thing. I don't know how much they're getting into the tactics and such and some of those, special maneuvers and whatever else. I have no idea, but I really wanted to be able to introduce them to some modern hobby games, and of course I had to start with stuff that would be themes and such they would be interested in. And so my daughter and I showed Emma how to play Bark Avenue. Now, this is a delightful game. I've talked about it here in the past. I'm not going to get into the actual gameplay, but basically you are competing dog walkers trying to get your business started in New York City, and picking up dogs and walking around, trying to make them happy, getting their pictures, getting them to poop, etc., and dropping them off back home. And as we're setting this thing up and passing out the components, and Emma all of a sudden goes, "Oh my God, is that poop? Oh, why is it squishy? That's so gross." And I joked with my daughter, Mel, I said, at some point in this game, you're going to hear Emma go, "Oh, come on, dogs poop." And you're going to hear, "Yes, they pooped." And I was right on both counts. It's one of the most delightful parts of this game. Getting into the teach was a little bit of a challenge. Obviously, she's not used to being taught a Euro game. Chess is a game that you can learn very easily. But then, of course, getting into those advanced tactics can take months or years to learn. And you sort of learn as you play. This, obviously, these Euro-type games, you got to learn everything up front. You got to know how to play the game, and there was a lot to cover. She was getting a little overwhelmed, but she did very, very well with this game. Actually trailed me by just 4 points at the end. And she said she had a really great time. So that was really nice. Bark Avenue, there's also a new expansion coming out, and you can late pledge it still. It's called Kings and Queens. Adds Queens, New York onto the map, which I thought was pretty clever. And I'm looking forward. I got to actually late pledge that. We then played, the next morning, we played Tacta. That was really hard for me to say. And I've already briefly chatted about this. So this is a pattern building kind of a game. It's not even pattern building. Someone at GenCon actually likened it to dominoes, and I thought that's pretty apt because you've got these cards with these sort of shapes and symbols on them. And so you may have a card that has its corner kind of marked, kind of a line across the corner makes a triangle. You got to then find the card that has that same shape, that same kind of triangular edge, usually printed onto one of its edges. And if you see one, then you can place the corner of your card over that same shape on the card beneath it. They have to match up. You can't just cover a card however you want. It has to have a matching sort of outline. These cards have these pips on them that represent your points. You're going to have a deck of cards of your own player color. And so every pip that's showing on one of the cards of your color at the end of the game is going to score you a point. And so as you're playing this, you're covering up symbols, you're covering up points, you're covering up, and trying to just expand across the play area. And it's delightful. It's a very, very nice game. It looks really nice on the table, especially the more players you have, the more colors there are. This setup is literally, you get your cards, you kind of shuffle them, you put one central card out to start things, and away you go. You never have a hand of cards. You just hold your deck of cards, and on your turn, you can either play the top or the bottom card of that deck. That's it. That's how you play. The only downsides to this, and there's 2 or 3 of them, this thing takes up a massive amount of space. These are regular size playing cards. You can see in these images that in the 4-player game that we played on my large Mycroft game topper, we used quite a lot of the play surface. This box goes to 6. As I mentioned, the promotional version lets you go up to 8. I don't think 8 would fit on that table. I don't think it's possible. So even though it's this very, very lightweight, very, very approachable, very fun, don't get me wrong, card game, it takes a lot of space to play this thing. Secondly, counting through all these pips is quite a bit of a challenge. The way that these things kind of get spread out, it's just sort of hard to keep track of the ones you've already counted. You can't just collapse the cards back and go, okay, just count through my deck, because all of your cards will be in a play. Nothing doesn't get played, but your symbols might get covered, your pips might get covered, and so you've got to count it as it sits on the table. And so, yeah, I wish they'd gone with smaller cards. I actually kind of wish the cards were clear, because I think that would even look neater and might make your points kind of stand out a little better. But like I said, it's a fun game. If you got the space for it and the people to play it with, I would highly recommend Tacta. After that, Emma spent longer at the house than we thought she was going to, so we were kind of just trying to keep her and my daughter entertained and busy and out of each other's hair. I think they were getting tired of each other. But we played Pitchcar. I won't talk about this. I only really got like one photo, but this is a very simple dexterity game. You're flicking a little wooden disc around a track like it's a race car. We had a ton of fun with this. I think we played it 3 times back to back. We all won a game, which was great. This one's a lot of fun. Now, I bought Mini. This is Pitchcar Mini. I think you can see it there on the cover. I bought it when my daughter was very young because I thought, hey, she had tiny hands. Let's get the tiny version. That should kind of level the playing field. Now she's taller than her mother. I don't really think I need the mini version. It's starting to feel like a little bit of a hindrance when you really want to try and get some big power move in. I need to see about buying the big version, which is coming back out this year. They're taking pre-orders now. You might need another mortgage on your house. It's very, very expensive. But I think I'm going to go in on it because I really want to have the big version, the full version of Pitchcar. We then played Blokus, the last game that we played before Emma left. We played this game a long time ago. My daughter, we were at like a game group, and my daughter actually ended up sitting with a group of young adults by herself playing with these kids to my age. And did very well. And they were very, very impressed at her ability to play. This was a couple years ago. This game is pretty solid. I really got to say this game is pretty solid. And I think that based on how much I enjoy Tenpenny Parks, that might be why this game clicks with me a little bit. But you're putting out these sort of Tetris-y polyomino shapes, but they can never touch a side of your own pieces. So you only touch at the corners. As you're placing these out, you're trying to sort of expand across the board. You're trying to get all your pieces out. Every piece that you don't get to play will count you a negative point for every square on those pieces. It's just very fun. It's simple, but it's very thinky. There's some strategy to it. You really feel clever when you can actually cut through the path of another player. Makes it a lot of fun. I like it. I wish this copy was smaller. And I think there are smaller copies. But I really enjoy Blokus. And then Emma left. That was the end of that. Later on the week before GenCon, my wife and I played Mistwind. I talked about this recently in an episode because I just got this in Origins. This is a pick up and deliver game, but with a unique twist. You've got a map out in front of the players with this kind of fantasy land on it, and there's a bunch of networks. It looks very Ticket to Ride-ish, and in fact, you even get a card at the beginning of the game setting up some paths that you need to try to complete. You need to build a network between some of these locations. Again, very, very Ticket to Ride. But nothing else is. You've got a couple of these tower buildings that you'll be able to place out, and then you have 3 flying whales. Yeah, I don't know, but whatever. You start with one of them, and you're trying to move around this map, picking up resources from various locations. Your whale can only carry 1 resource, but you don't pay to get them. You then have to travel to drop them off, but there's this idea of building a network. So if you are leaving a space that either has one of your towers or one of your other flying whales, you don't pay anything. But if you leave a space that doesn't have any of your network, you have to spend a krill, because they're whales. And so everything that you're doing in this game is trying to get the resources to build those towers, trying to get the resources also give you points. There's this really interesting, sometimes frustrating action selection mechanism. You have these 5 poker chips, 1 through 5. You're going to choose one of them at the beginning of each round not to play. You're going to use those tokens to then trigger either resource gathering abilities. You basically can just kind of flush yourself with some resources, or you can take actions on the other side. There are character cards across the top of the board that will give you either instant one-time use later on, ongoing effect, or endgame scoring abilities. There are then also cards along the bottom that will also give you some actions, and then the last player to place their chips on one of those cards may get a bonus action at the end of the round. But you can only be on those side tiles once per round. Once you take a card, from the top, they go away. It's only that bottom board that people can kind of stack up on. And so, man, there is so much careful planning and so much careful timing that you have to utilize. And we goofed a rule in this, and it was totally, actually, both of our faults, because I taught it, I read it, and I taught it, and then we both forgot about it. And that was that your whales also count as your network. So if at the end of the game you've accomplished any of these point-to-point requirements of these cards with either your towers or your whales, you can then score that card. In fact, I think you can even score it mid-game. If you get it in place, you can go ahead and score it. I don't actually quite remember. But we forgot about that. And so at the end of the game, we're like, man, I just could not get enough towers out, and I've lost all these points. I had a whale right there that could have just moved one space and completed that network, and I'd have gotten those points. And we just flat forgot. And once I realized that the next day, my opinion of the game actually improved at that moment, because I liked the game, except for the fact that I just felt very restricted in being able to build where I wanted to build, because I forgot that I could kind of make do without that building, without that action to build, by just putting a whale there. And so the efficiency that kind of gets to open up later in the game, you can zip all over your network for free and pick up stuff and drop stuff off. It becomes very rewarding. And I liked it. I had a good time with this. I think we'll try and get this tabled again fairly quick. Mistwind. All right, then I left for GenCon. A couple other games to get through real quick. We played Pergola with Katie and Greg, and I did a review on this. You can certainly go and check that out here in the channel. It's a delightful game. It's just very, very light. And the first time you play it, you'll see everything that there is to see. I did try in this play to kind of focus on just one or two aspects of the game, maybe 2.5 aspects of the game, and as a result did very well with it, got a lot of points, really kind of focused on some of the end game things that you can trigger throughout the game to give you more scoring potential. You could do a whole lot of stuff and not score any points, or you can focus on just a few things and rack up a bunch of points, and so I won. Listen, when I played with Emma, my daughter's friend, I tried to take it easy, but when I'm playing with Katie and Greg, the gloves are off because they know what they're doing, so I hosed them in Pergola. Let me see. The next game that we played was Katie and Greg bought a copy of Citizens of the Spark. This is also from Thunderworks Games, who are doing Tenpenny Parks. This is an interesting game, and unfortunately I have forgotten most of the titles of these cards, but you're going to have sets of these cards. It's just a box of cards and a couple of, they're called sparks. They're your points, but you could also pretend that they're money, basically. You're going to choose a couple of these decks of cards to then combine into one large deck, very much like Dominion. So in Dominion, you may want to play as nobles and sort of mix and match them across a couple different expansions. You gather all the cards of that type, you shuffle everything together, and that's your deck that you're working with through the entire game. And then, of course, from that, you're building your own deck. You're not building a deck in this game. You're just building a tableau of these cards in front of you. On your turn, you'll get a couple of sets of cards, pairs of cards that you can choose to then add to your tableau. The cards will stack with their same type. So there was a scout. There was some sort of like a warrior. There was a gardener or something like that. I can't quite recall. And so you're trying to sort of stack up values of these cards. So you're going to draft those two cards, add them to your tableau, and then optionally trigger any one of your cards. And each card has an effect that will increase its value or its strength based on how many cards you have of it in your tableau at that time. So the one I remember is that there was a scientist. And if you have one scientist and you trigger it, you got 5 points, and then that card actually forced you to get rid of another card, and then the card that you trigger goes away. That's always consistent. So you could trigger the scientist, get 5 points, get rid of one card, get rid of the scientist, and that was your turn. And then actually every player around you can optionally trigger one of their scientists if they have one and if they want to. But if you have 2 scientists, you get 10 points. You still have to trash cards, so have to trash one of your scientists, you keep the other one, and again, the other players can copy. If you have 3 scientists, then you get 15 points. Trash a card, trash that top scientist, players can copy, and that's it. And so there is this kind of somewhat interesting aspects. The cards also have symbols on them. And so the card may say, well, like for the gardener or whatever he was called, you were going to get 1 point per garden symbol that you had in your tableau for every gardener that you have. And it wasn't called the gardener. I can't remember what it was called. But it was kind of the idea of like, maybe it was a farmer. I don't remember. But if you had 2 farmers, then you were going to get 2 points per, and if you had 3 farmers, 3 points per, or something like that. I think it was a point for every 2, a point for every 1, or 2 points for every 1. I think that was a distribution. Now, at first I didn't really like the game at all. But as I was thinking about it later, I was like, I kind of get what it was doing. And I like the fact that it could be variable with every play. I like this idea of the whole copying thing we didn't really utilize very well. But there was definitely a strong luck element. If you had a pretty good setup, but you just didn't have the card to score off of it, and all of a sudden on the turn, at the beginning of your turn, 2 of those cards flop out into the market. Oh, perfect. I'll take those, and I score a ton of points. Haha. And it's like, oh, God, it would have been great if they had flopped out on my turn. I'd love to have those cards. So just a definite luck of the draw there. That was kind of a bit of a bummer, and it just felt a bit swingy. The scores, however, were quite tight. In the long run, I think I came in second, or maybe a very, very close third, I think is what I did. So I actually didn't really hate it that bad. I don't see myself running out to grab something like this. I don't think I'd ever get to play it enough to see all that variability, which is another reason why I never got into Dominion, despite the fact that I liked Dominion. But it was an interesting game, Citizens of the Spark. We then, as I mentioned, we went to the BGG Hot Games room, and I got to play a bit of Galileo Galilei. I ran into my buddy Tim Eck, who's here from Richmond. Played with him and his buddy Aaron and Aaron's wife Sam. Sam was a bit intimidated by the rules of this. She's not a very heavy gamer. This is not a very, very heavy game, but it definitely takes some very careful planning, and even I didn't really get to fully experience this in the partial playthrough. I think we got like 3 or 4 rounds of this. That was all we really got to do. But you're collecting these, you're getting these dice, which you never roll. Like I said, they're just a resource tracker. And once you have a certain value of dice and certain colors, they're going to let you see some of these distant celestial bodies in our solar system. And it was this kind of idea that they're red, yellow, and blue dice, and you're trying to tune your microscope, your telescope, to be able to see these distant bodies and gauge where they are and how fast they're actually moving by understanding the color spectrum, which I did find pretty fascinating once I learned that. But you're also trying to do all this without upsetting the balance of the church. And so you have these inquisitors or whatever they're called, and there's this whole sort of reputation track, and you're trying to sort of keep them from investigating you and all that kind of stuff. I enjoyed it, and I was a little nervous because I had already bought it. I was intrigued by it when I saw it at Origins, but the dice scared me off. I enjoyed that partial playthrough. Like I said, we didn't get to finish it. It took us way too long to get through the teach. Sam was kind of distracting that a little bit, but I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to checking this out again, which I might get to do even this week with my buddy Daniel. The next game we played, and I'm going to try not to dwell on this, but we played Ice and Idols. Katie had gotten a couple of free tickets to demo this game. I thought it was going to be the 3 of us, Katie and Greg, her son, Justin, and then myself. But Justin brought his wife, who I'm apologizing. I don't remember her name. But so they had their table of 4. I ended up then joining the table next to them with 3 players I didn't know. I never caught their names. The father sat down, and his son sat down next to him, and I actually thought the kid was sick. He seemed very, very stressed. He was kind of like rocking in his seat. He was pulling his shirt over his head. He was taking a lot of deep breaths and deep sighs, and then I realized that he was autistic. Fairly well functioning, I will say. But when the demo folks taught us the game, this young man didn't watch any of it. He was kind of on his phone, which was probably a comfort mechanism, which I understand. The other guy next to me, he knew how to play the game. He was just wanting to try and get through a playthrough because he'd never actually gotten to finish a playthrough. And after the teach, the son tells the father, "Dad, I'm like pretty overwhelmed." And the father just says, "Yeah, I'm kind of there too. Let's play this game that now you have no idea how to play because you weren't able to listen to the teach." and more or less just kind of forced his son to play this game. And I don't cope well with that. We had really, really, really long periods of downtime because he didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't process his thoughts. He was very overwhelmed. I decided not to add fuel to the fire. I kind of just sat there and played on my phone myself while they kind of coached him through his turn. But that father should not have done that. I really think that father should have said, hey, you know what? You're right. We're both a little overwhelmed. Let's step out. Let's let these people play their game and we'll go do something else. We'll let you kind of come down, calm down, find some peace, find some quiet, and maybe we'll do something like this another time. Because it did. It made it an unpleasant experience. It was a 30 to 60 minute game. We played for 90 minutes. We were nowhere near being done. The player to my right was being very aggressive. This is a game where, and I'll go ahead and segue into the game. It's a game that's very sort of random chaos. You've got a round board in front of you with a bunch of plastic tiles on it with little like ice features on them, and you're trying to move around this board and pick up idols and drop them off at other locations. Now the idols, as well as their drop-off locations, are printed on the board underneath the main board with these clear plastic tiles because the board can actually spin. So the board can spin, these tiles can rotate and move, they can even be removed from the play surface, and so you're trying to move around this drastically shrinking, changing, ever adjusting area and grabbing these things that you can upgrade your player board. These idols will socket into your board to give you upgrades like the ability to rotate and move the board to slide around these tiles. You also have a special ability. Like, for example, mine gave me the ability to put tiles back on the board, but since the player to my right kept messing with me, I intentionally never put tiles back on the board. I just kept finding ways to get to where I needed to be and then rotating the board to get me to the idols that I wanted. But that's a lot. It's a lot for someone to put their head around, especially if they're struggling with some anxiety or whatever. And it was just an uncomfortable playthrough. And of course, frustrating that we still didn't get to finish it. But I understand. I just wish that the father had done the right thing there. I didn't really care for this game. I'm not a huge fan of that random chaos stuff. It reminded me a lot of the game of Oros, which I don't think I've ever talked about here on the channel. But I didn't like Oros for that same reason. I will say, however, that Ice and Idols gave you a lot more action points to spend. And so even with the player to my right constantly trying to kind of thwart me, I was still mostly able to always get the things done that I wanted to, by just trying to be very, very efficient and very cunning in how I moved around. And so even though we didn't finish the game, we kind of tabulated scores and I was in the lead when we finally had to quit. I also didn't think this game looked very nice. While these pieces are very fancy and the plastic clear pieces are pretty clever, they obstruct the view of the board underneath you, and so it's hard to really see what is an idol, where are the idols, versus where are the places to drop off those idols. It just didn't look very nice. And especially if you got a low camera angle, which I think I have at least one picture of that, it looked absolutely terrible. And I think they still sort of misstepped with the production of this game. As I always say, glad I got to try it. Not something I think I'll ever seek out, although it wasn't the worst of these random chaos games I've ever played, if I'm being honest. Ice and Idols. And the last game I got to play there at GenCon, basically that evening with my friends Katie and Greg, was Flip 7. I had some friends, actually Jeremy Brooks even mentioned that this is probably not a game for you, and he was absolutely right. This is a very, very simple game. Katie started off to teach by saying, well, do you know how to play 21? I was like, you mean blackjack? It's blackjack, it's not 21. But yeah, I know how to play blackjack. She goes, well, it's the same idea. You're just going to decide if you want to, draw another card or if you want to pass. But if you bust, then you don't score any points. And I was like, okay, fine. So we start playing, and she puts a couple cards in front of me. I was like, okay, yep, 19, I'm good. She goes, no, you can keep going. You're not playing the 21. I was like, then why'd you mention blackjack? Well, the whole idea is that you're just drawing out these cards. The cards range from 0 to 12, and there are as many cards in the deck as the number of that card. So there are 12 12s, 11 11s, 10 10s, and 1 0. Whatever. If you get 7 different numbers in front of you, you sort of end the round and you sort of win the round. You get some extra points, and then you total up the number of all the cards in front of you. There are other cards that come out too, like plus 10s, plus 4s, plus 2s, times 2, etc., which change the value of your cards for final scoring, but don't impact your busting. And the way that you simply bust is by having two of the same card. So you can have 2 1s. Well, actually, you can't because there's only 1 1. But if you end up with the 2 2s, then you will bust and you don't get to score any points. So it's push your luck in that you just decide when you want to stop drawing cards. But it was that element of it that I actually think made the game very boring, because Katie was kind of managing the deck, basically acting as the dealer, if you will. Greg was going through a bunch of Magic cards to try and find some to sell the next day at GenCon. I was kind of playing on my phone, and all we did was wait until she looked at us and said, "Oh yeah, hit me," or "Oh no, I'll pass." Very, very little decision space. And it just made the game very just boring. Like, I didn't feel like I was actually playing a game. I was just kind of participating in an activity. Katie did suggest that 3 wasn't really the best player count for the game. It really is best with a lot of players, when people are a little bit more invested in the score and how everyone else is doing. And you get a lot more jeering and cheering when someone busts, and that's a lot of fun. And I can see that. It's just definitely not a game for me and my family, or really any of the folks that I typically play with. I could maybe see this for like a family reunion, but I'm not going to bother buying it for something like that. That was Flip 7, and the last game that I got to play at GenCon. Okay, real quick to wrap up the show. As I said, no question of the week for this week. The question for next week, episode 71, is what is the craziest thing you have ever done in the name of board gaming? You can answer that on episode 69 if you didn't already, or you can answer it here. Either way, we'll cover those answers next week. If you didn't already, do please go and check out the Beasts and Diplomacy, at least the preview video. It's not too long. You can even skip the second half of it if you're not interested in the interview. But those games have not, or those videos have not gotten a lot of attention. I'm trying to kind of get the numbers up on them. If you wouldn't mind checking that out, my family helped me out with those, and we had a lot of fun. By the way, if you didn't notice, I got some new swag. And you can get one of these too now. I have an official merchandise store up on a website called Spreadshop. I'll put the link down here in the video. You can go there and get shirts, coffee mugs, water bottles, I think stickers, and I think maybe a hat or two I may have out there. All kinds of stuff with this logo and even the original Tabletop Toolbox logo that you may have seen on my old polo shirts. Feel free to go get some. Yes, I will admit that I get a couple of bucks from each sale. It's not very much. You're not going to see me in a Lamborghini anytime soon. But one thing I would like to get is a better portable camera for use at these conventions, because I could definitely do some better footage than what you have seen here in this video. So that's one thing I'm going to be working on. Maybe still a Kickstarter to come out next year to just try and raise a couple of bucks to help me get some gear. But if you would like to get some Tabletop Toolbox gear, you now have the option to do so. Go and check out the store. Okay, one last thing. I had some real nice conversations in the past weekend with some folks like Stephen Bonacore, Tony Lawhorn, even Tom Vassell, Emery Harris of the Dice Tower, just trying to get some other suggestions and feedback on how to keep growing the channel. And I'm going to talk more about that in the next episode, but I do want to ask, and I'm also going to do a poll here in the next day or two, of what games that you have seen in this video do you want to hear more about. I realize Vantage might be on that list. Of course, I'm going to do a video for Tenpenny Parks. Galileo is pretty interesting. I'm going to do a poll, and I'd love to see some feedback on what things you'd like me to delve into, and I'm going to try and get those done this month. So let me know. I'd love to get your thoughts there. That is the end of the episode. The GenCon Spectacular has come to an end. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to getting back to Question of the Week next week, and we will chat again very soon, folks. Thanks for watching. Cheers.